Worth. It pretty much overlooks Sundance Square. They have a full building at Spring Creek and Communications just off the tollway, Plano. And they have a location in Addison along the tollway, and then one in East, they call it East Plano. It's a city line area that's just absolutely beautiful. Top couple of floors of a building. And it is. And
I think we're going to see a real shift, Bill. I really do, in the way companies are going to operate their real estate. I think you're going to see some changes within the market for sure.
Okay, we've had our ratings. This was the fake Jeff Crilly.
I was
now the real Jeff Crilly's here.
Because they want to see the guns.
Kelly, a short time ago, finished in the quote. I guess it was over 40 or whatever.
Over 40 and
over
and
40.
open.
Wait, I'm going to tell this. She finished over 40, number 2, and so she said, "Well, I'm going to challenge the youngins, the ones that there's no way." She finished second in the young category.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's unheard of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you left some tears on the sides over there.
It's all right. It's all right. It's what happens when you take care of yourself and you do what you have to do and you age gracefully. That's what I wanted to teach them.
Kelly started out as Miss Beaumont and Mrs. Denton, and then with Disney, in their very high level institute, and then now she's an author, who we'll talk about later, which is kind of cool.
And a small business owner now, so hey,
that's even
it
better.
all comes around.
It's smaller than I thought it was.
I'm going to introduce you as we start.
It's 14, 15
Thank you.
square feet, something like that.
Come on.
He's thinking about
Come on.
45 or 50 acres.
She's here for a cameo. Yeah.
Barely.
No, I have my reasons. She's here for a cameo.
I mean, you just owe the FW. You have other money that you put into it to fix it up.
I want to know something exciting. Who had something crazy exciting happen?
Well, I picked up 2 new clients from Zoom meetings this last week.
That's a success.
Yeah, so I've been launching them, and it's been pretty neat. One's in Georgia and one's in Houston. Never met them personally.
Well, we've been selling masks, PPP supplies like crazy. And hand sanitizer, 275-gallon totes, 200-300 of those at a time, million, 2 million, 4 million masks at a time. Put together a warehouse on the East Coast and on the West Coast, and it's been amazing, the pivot. We call it C-Suite Supplies, c-suitesupplies.com. And it has absolutely everything that you might need to take your business back, and very economical. And that's been a pivot. Another pivot was taking a bourbon distillery and taking 2 of their lines and turning it into hand sanitizer lines, which has been just incredible. And good morning from Michelle Pearson. Awesome. Michelle is the lady that is deciding if you can come into the room or not. So be nice to her. She has all the power.
That's right, Bill.
Bill, you're asking for something exciting?
Yes.
We've had something really exciting.
Identify yourself. Steve Sharp.
Yeah. Good to see you, my friend. We've had an exciting number come up. We have just distributed over 100,000 Bible downloads in the Middle East and Central Asia. There's such a hunger for the Word of God, and we've been amazed. We just made it easy. As I don't know if it's a bad thing to say here, it may cost me, but I said we made it so easy even a caveman could do it. So you push one button, download the Bible, and it's been a tremendous thing. Very, very exciting movement in that part of the world.
So you're saying I could even do it?
Even Bill Wallace could do it. That's right.
No, as far as my feelings on faith, it's never wrong to talk about your faith, whatever that faith is.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not for me to say you're right or wrong, but rather for me to listen, because that's yours. It's like when we talk about the qualifications for membership in Success North Dallas. Be a success in your own eyes.
Mhm.
I or no one has any right to define what success is for you.
And make it easy for people to access. You know,
Yeah.
that's the thing. So
Steve, what language are you distributing in?
we're actually doing it in 10 languages.
Wow.
So we're making it, that's part of the easy part, is you just choose it that you want it, choose your language, and it's a very easy download. Most of these countries have really just gotten their Bible in the last 2 years. So we're literally making something brand new accessible to them to bring into the phones.
Steve's group is Global Heart Ministries. If you want to know anything more about it, Global Heart Ministries. I saw Neil Medwood out there. Neil, tell us about what's going on. Neil is your cybersecurity solutions, period, whatever it is, preferred technology solutions. If you've got internet issues, security issues, you need to talk to them. They've written a white paper that one of the cyber futurists read and said, this is excellent. So Neil, what's going on? Well, I saw Neil Medwood.
I'm here. Can you hear me
Here,
now?
where is here? Did you get lost in cybersecurity?
I'm in my office working as I always do, supporting our clients and everything else. But yeah, we've been really busy. This whole work from home scenario, and plus a lot of companies are coming back to the office. The security demands of the work from home obviously grew versus everybody working at the office, but picking up managed service customers, those are customers that outsource or IT to us, either in co-managed or fully managed service. And, again, just staying very busy. On the exciting thing, this is a personal excitement, but we have property in the Kiamichi Wilderness, it's called, of southeastern Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I've been wanting to get my hands on these 5 acres from this person that did too many bad things when they were younger. I finally got my hands on that property, and we're making a big party area. So if we ever want to have a Success North Dallas mountain event, we have the area and the time and the place to do it.
That could be fun. We at C-Suite, we went up to the Hero Club. We went up to Crazy Horse, which is 5 times or 10 times the size of Mount Rushmore up in South Dakota. And we literally we're out on the arm of Crazy Horses. He's doing like this in this type of a pose. And that was an interesting and a fun, I mean, it was boots, jeans, walking sticks, shotguns, whatever it may be. But
lots of bugs.
We'll have to talk about that. That could be fun.
It could be.
And we're going to start in about 3 minutes.
So one more thing real quick, just, talking about what going down an angle that you went, and this might have been done in the past. I know this is post-COVID-19 stuff, but it'd be great to get a trip like to Mexico or Bahamas or something, arrange a Success North Dallas junket, fun junket with family and everything. Go to maybe once a year, we have a focus place to go to, and just raise your hand. Hey, this is where we're going. Whoever wants to join, please join. And we have a good old time in different places.
That could be fun. Neil, it sounds like you're volunteering to work on that.
I would. I would raise my hand for that, for sure.
How do we get our speakers? The old-fashioned way. I believe you're going to speak for us in March. Is that right? And it always works. Or they ask us. David, welcome. Martin Metzler, welcome. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. And there's Phil Barnett. Phil Barnett and his Barnett Energy, they're when we started our partner members, they were the first one that believed in us or believed in me, and literally came alongside of us, wrote the first check. And
still believe.
I'll be eternally grateful.
Still believe in you, Bill.
Thank you, my friend. And there's Michelle MacArthur. Oh my gosh, 12 cuts. Incredible Brazilian steakhouse.
Incredible.
Founded by the founders of Fogo de Chao, where they're doing everything there that they couldn't quite do at Fogo de Chao because it got so big. So we ate there right after they could come back to COVID. And they're doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Bill.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey.
Bill, this is Zandra Evans, and I just wanted to give a look. It's a good report. So Zandra TV Network won the 26th Annual Communicators Award of Distinction for TV, Media, and Talk Show. So in the midst of this pandemic, we won.
We call this a virtual standing applause. This is applause. This is a virtual standing applause.
Yeah.
Well done. Congratulations.
Yeah, over 6,000 people applied, and we were one of the winners.
That's awesome.
So,
That's awesome.
doing good stuff. Thank you for letting
So I
me-
saw somebody from Manassas, Virginia.
Yeah, that's Jeff Parks here.
Hey.
Performance Breakers. Good buddy of Gerald Turner.
Well, you're keeping good company.
Thank you. Actually, 25-year friendship.
Gerald Turner, Dr. Gerald Turner, was one of the ones sequestered with Dr. Fouché at MIT and Johns Hopkins from January 4th to the second week of February studying this. And he did an amazing town hall for us that very, very, very insightful. And we'll see where this all goes.
Bill, is there anything that you haven't forgotten?
That I haven't forgot?
Yeah, you seem to remember everyone and everything. I'm amazed. Particularly for a man of 70.
Thanks.
If he can't remember, it's because he can't recall.
Or as I think was it Einstein that said, I don't have to remember everything. I just know where to find the answer.
That's right.
And and it's much like networking. Never meet a stranger. At least you'll know who you don't like. It's that simple. And Mr. Crilly, let's go ahead and get this thing started. I put on some makeup too this morning. I was a little,
Gotta get out in the sun more.
A little dewy.
There you go. So Jan, let's get this thing started.
Okay. Michelle, will you mute everybody for me? And we'll get started. Good morning. This is Jan Clodner, and I would like to welcome all of you to Success North Dallas's virtual June meeting. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes, but at first, we've got a few housekeeping rules I'd like to go over. Even though your mic is of yourself, please make sure your camera is stationary. We don't want anybody to go out in the garage with your mobile phone, cleaning it or making breakfast in front of us. At the conclusion of our meeting, we'll be taking questions using the chat function. Please type your question in chat and it will be read to the monitor. Thank you for being here. Let's begin.
For the past 30 years, on the third Wednesday of every month, Success North Dallas has had the best of the best in speakers from all over the world. These speakers come not to be paid, but because of the people in the room, the people who have founded 97 companies, created over 1,000 jobs, and turned out 7 Ernst & Young Entrepreneurs of the Year.
And now, allow me to introduce to you my longtime friend and SND business partner who just turned 70. Let's give him a round of hello, happy birthday.
Woo!
Is that true?
Woo! Happy birthday, Bill.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Uh-oh, uh-oh.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Oh, well.
You're
there's
looking
another
good.
Happy birthday.
All right, the meeting's already out of control. Welcome to Success North Dallas. I am so glad you're here. We're broadcasting live from the studios of Real News PR. And Real News PR started long before there was ever fake news. When Jeff Curley called me one day many, many years ago and said, I've been told if I want to write a book in Dallas, I need to know you. And that started a friendship while he was a Fox reporter, an Emmy award-winning Fox reporter. And then when his book sales, they wouldn't let him charge to speak. Can you imagine that? But he could sell his books. So he turned his books into currency, and the currency spoke, and it spoke beautifully. And when his book sales got to a certain point, he resigned from Fox, went to his garage, and said hello to my new office. And he started Real News PR. And over the years, Real News PR has only hired broadcast journalists, people that understand the industry, people that understand his moniker, the speed of news. Real News PR operates at the speed of news. He has 8 studios, and we're broadcasting today from the anchor desk. And I'd like to welcome my dear friend, Jeff Curley.
Thank you, Bill. We call it real news, but I got to call fake news on 70 years old. You look amazing. You really do. I mean, like I saw that on the screen. I said, "There's no way." I'm honored. Thank you so much for having the meeting here.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Also, go to his website. They do all of our videos. Go to our website and look at them. Some of the graphics that you just saw with the short talk. They do a tremendous amount for Success North Dallas, and like so many others, they've been in our corner for a very, very long time. And when you talk about Success North Dallas, look at the logo, because the logo really tells the story. You have success, which is what we all aspire to. And then you have the interconnecting C's. Well, that's how we do it, connecting the right people for the right reasons at the right time. And ladies and gentlemen, we're so glad you're here. We're so glad you're joining in with a group whose qualifications for membership are very simple, but yet very direct. Be a success in your own eyes. I or anyone else has the right to define what success is for you. Honor your commitments. Let's go back to the handshake. And be a giver, as you will hear a number of times through the meeting. Be a giver. It's all about our fellow men and women. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why we're here. That's what's going on. I want to take a moment and welcome the numerous new members that have joined. Normally we'd have you stand up and give your name and discipline, but in these times we're doing things a little bit different. But when we go back to meeting in person, July the 15th at Prestonwood Country Club, over the next few months, we'll start reintroducing everybody. And I really look forward to that. And if you are a guest on today for some reason and are not on our email list, please sign up, because we have happy hours coming up. We have town halls coming up, as well as additional meetings. And while you're there, take a look at our new website that was done by RP1. We looked at what was going on during this COVID-19 when we were told to shelter in place and do all these other things. But what we did is we looked at what haven't we been able to do. And over this time, we've completely rebuilt from ground up a brand new website for you all, a redo of all of our marketing materials, our marketing emphasis. When we go back to meeting in person, the first 2 meetings, July and August, we will broadcast virtually. And then we're going to start a virtual membership for people that are 100 miles outside of the Dallas market at a reduced price, because we have people like Pat Asp, long way away, people in New York, people in Florida, and a typical meeting will also have 3 to 5 jets land at Addison Airport. So we've hit many, many states, many countries during our broadcast, and it's a good thing. And you look at this, I can't do this alone. I don't do this alone. I have got the most incredible team surrounding me. From Anya Zagan, that's been there forever, Kathy Clatterbaugh, that does our Twitter, Lucinda Ruck, that does our LinkedIn, and Kelly Fullman, you'll see later, that helps at the door, Lori Williamson with our write-ups. We've got David Hamilton that does the American Future series with us. Dean Lindsay, John Funderburg, Jeff Crilly, of course, Jeff and his team, Chris Cambria, that do all of our video work and all of the things. Casey Haston with who helps us with the front every day. Bronwyn Allen. Well, I want to talk about Bronwyn Allen, and when you think about it, she and Kent Barner, he is kind of the connection with our Success North Dallas young executives that are doing awesome things. And Bronwyn Allen with her high profile staffing, she sponsors it. And Melanie Murphy, of course, Melanie and Dean Lindsay are always out front helping me. Sarah's daughter, Sarah's Dallas Curley, Jeff's son. Sarah is Jeff's daughter. Michelle Pearson, who's letting you in. Michelle has completely revamped how we work the front of the room, how we have people at the front desk, and people are joining. And then Matt Kretzman has helped us with the website. And then, of course, our dear friends at the Marriott Quorum who put up our out-of-town members and our Marriott Quorum people, Cassie Roten and May Farron. So all of you all, remember these people and remember our partner members that I'm going to introduce, because they do this. Our volunteers all have their own companies. They don't get paid. They do this for you and for me and for Success North Dallas, because they believe in Success North Dallas. On the screen right now, you see our social media. Don't hesitate to pick up your phone and say, hey, I'm here, where are you? Or whatever else you might want to say, because it really makes a difference. And in the news, we do this every time. But when we go to our In the News segment, we talk about new things that have happened, crazy things. And the first thing on In the News is a new book. And the book is Be the Hero and Rescue Yourself, and creating the inner courage to wear your own cape. And Kelly has been an inspiration to all of us. But Kelly, say hello. And
Hi.
Your new book and the inspiration for it.
It is. Well, I always tell everyone it's Bill Wallace's fault that the book happened. The book, I want to rupture the stereotypes of the 10 Steps to a Better Life self-help book. Because when I started writing this book, I started finding all the heroes in my life that have given me the opportunities to move forward. But at the end of the day, I had to put my own cape on and fly, because sometimes those steps get rotted out or get pulled out from underneath you. So you just have to be your own hero. And Bill's one of my heroes. So this is your official book, signed and autographed.
Thank you, my dear friend. It's wonderful. We were talking about Kelly earlier, and that's our 98th book. But Kelly and her husband also started our 98th company, a trailer rental company. When they saw a need and a demand up north that wasn't there, and they filled it. You have how many trailers now?
We have about 20 trailers now, North DFW trailers out of Denton and Grapevine. And we just started renting out cargo trailers, enclosed trailers. And my husband even got to meet Hulk Hogan and his Barracuda that we delivered to him in Florida a couple of months ago.
Well, it's amazing. The people in our room have started 98 companies, 1,000 jobs, and 7 Ernst & Young Entrepreneurs of the Year. And our partner members are what helped make it happen. When we turned 25, I was meeting with some people at the Richards Group, and we were looking at a way to continue this on. And we came up with the partner member aspect. And a partner member is one who believes in us and has come alongside of us financially. And their Cancer Treatment Centers of America, we were mentioning them earlier. Baker Tilly, the former Tom Montgomery's incredible CPA firm. The Texas Legends, the Dallas Mavericks NBA, D-League or G-League now, Gatorade League affiliate, the Dallas Business Journal, Real News PR. Go to their website. Jeff and Chris Cambria have done magic. They interview our speakers before. We put a short video on the website, and they've been helping us for so very long.
Bill, can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, Bill. Would you go back to the script?
Oh, did I miss something? I'll finish our partner members.
So many things.
Okay. I've been noted back to the script. I missed this yesterday in rehearsal too. But in our script, it says Moon Family. And I've messed Jan up. But in our script, it says Moon Family. And the Moon Family, Daniel Moon, spoke last month. And they have graciously given us, because we talked about a quote last month. And that quote was, today's obstacles are today's opportunities. While many wait on the sidelines for tomorrow, leaders lead in the moment. And that's what the Moon Family did. They opened the Stonebriar Hyatt Regency at Stonebriar Mall on June 1st, right in the middle of all this. And if you're a Success North Dallas member or friend, we have a staycation gift from the Moon Family. For the rest of the summer, you will get from Hyatt a 20% discount if you identify yourself. And you have to have a code. You can call us for the code or look at your emails, but you'll get a 20% discount. And this hotel is fabulous. And if you recall, they also opened the Legacy West Renaissance, and it is fabulous. But this is at the Hyatt. So thank you to the Moon Family. And now, Mr. Claudner, I am back on script.
No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. There's another in the news.
Speak up. I can't hear you.
I said there's another in the news. Come celebrate with Bill, his birthday at Lava Cantina, Frisco Grandscape. Is that on the script?
No, it's not on the script.
Son of a gun. Sorry.
Okay, we're having a get-together at Lava Cantina at 7:30 on Saturday. If you identify yourself as part of, I like that. You put Jen at 60, she's going to kill you.
She is.
She's going to kill you. She'll be 55. Jan,
I like to get on her.
this may be your last appearance.
Could be.
Anyway, they'll waive the cover, so hope to see you there. Prosperity Bank, partner member, Aaron Shelby. This is the old Texas Legacy as of a couple of weeks ago. Texas Legacy had 700 employees, 65 branches. They merged with Prosperity. It's now called Prosperity Bank. And they now have 3,600 employees, 245 branches. They're in most of the Texas area except for El Paso. And they also have branches in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. So Aaron Shelby and the Shelby family, and yes, that's the Shelby Cobra family. Congratulations on just an unbelievable opportunity. Preferred Technology Business Solutions, your technology business provider, especially in this cybersecurity world of going back. Neil Medwood was talking about that earlier. The Network Bar reopens Monday, the 22nd. So that should be absolutely fabulous. ISS Charities, Cleaning for a Reason. Their goal is to clean 1 million homes of cancer patients for free. And they are an arm of ISSA, which is the International Cleaning Association. RP Business One, Business Rocket Fuel, Brad Parnell, our new website. Thank you for being a partner member. Pinnacle Graphics, we were talking about Chris Hill earlier, started his company at Success North Dallas 25 years ago. And Tom Neeson, Acuity Systems, was the one that came up with a bunch of these ideas on the partner members. And we've talked about City Central. Mark has talked about what the reality of a true co-working space is. It's not the WeWorks, it's the family atmosphere of City Central and Fox Rothschild, 950 attorneys nationally, unbelievable. And we'll talk more about that later. And now CFO, fractional CFOs all over the US. And of course, Barnett Energy, Phil Barnett, our first partner member that we talked about before. And ladies and gentlemen, every month I try to do a quote and to find something that's relevant to the times, that's relevant to the speaker. And the quote I picked out this time happens to be from my book, Being a Catalyst for Success, The Fulfilling Life of a Servant Leader. And it's actually quote number 14. And it's when we seek to discover the best in others, we bring out the best in ourselves. And ladies and gentlemen, if there was ever a time in our history to seek out the best in others, that time is now. And if it was ever a time to bring out the best in ourselves, that time is now. Because we're in tumultuous times. But think about it. Our survival rate is 100%. And that's not too bad, because we are leaders and we do lead from the heart. We just need to learn to listen more and talk less. Because if you look at every major struggle, it came from the lack of communications. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Success North Dallas. Our keynote speaker today is fabulous. She's one of a team of over 100 from this incredible law firm that are focusing. They're 950 attorneys, and they're focusing 100 of their people on every aspect of COVID-19. So when you call them, they are not saying, I've got to go find out the answer. They're saying, here is the answer. And Clint David has become a dear friend of mine. I've known Clint for many, many years. He's an attorney here in North Dallas who started out in the mahogany boardrooms of the downtown law firms, got tired of that and the fees they were charging, came to North Dallas and put together a boutique law firm. He looked at every discipline and went out and found the best person in that discipline and brought them into this little boutique law firm. And when Fox Rothschild was looking to expand nationally from the East Coast into Texas, they picked Clint David and his firm. Clint has been a managing partner. He's a partner at this point, and he is not only a dear friend, he and Fox Rothschild are partner members with Success North Dallas. And Clint, I'd like to go to you and have you introduce our speaker. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Clint David.
Well, thank you very much for that round of applause. Well, you are the king of introductions, so I really appreciate it. Bill and I have known each other for over a century, and we're close friends and have worked well together. I was really honored when he called me several weeks ago that he would like a speaker on what the entire world is dealing with right now, COVID. And as Bill mentioned, we have nearly 1,000 lawyers. We have a large team of attorneys that are addressing the COVID problem. And Jenny and an expert, and she is graciously giving her time this morning for the benefit of North Dallas. Let me tell you a little bit about Jenny. I'm honored to introduce her. Jenny is a labor and employment attorney with the law firm of Fox Rothschild in our Minneapolis office. And we have 26 or 27 offices now. And for those of you who don't know, Fox Rothschild is over 100 years old, founded out of Philly. So I'm so pleased she can join us. Jenny provides strategic advice to employers, including hiring and firing procedures, management issues, disability and leave issues, and most importantly, a very hot topic right now, wage and hour compliance. And those are her areas of expertise. She also handles employment training, employment internal investigations, drafting your HR policies and procedures and agreements. And she's also a litigator. She has experience in litigating employment claims, including discrimination claims, retaliation claims, whistleblower claims, and something that is near and dear to all of our hearts, non-compete agreements and trade secret claims. And we've all probably had some litigation or clients involved in that area. Jenny is part of our COVID team at Fox Rothschild, and I was so pleased she could join us. Just briefly, she was named among super lawyers and rising stars by the Minnesota Bar by Thomson Reuters for the years 2015 to 2019. She has been named to the top women attorneys list for the Minnesota Bar by Best Lawyers for the year 2019. She will be speaking to us on navigating the new normal at work, which basically means what in the living hell do we do from now on? And without further ado, I would like to interview one of our Minnesota attorneys, Jenny Fuller. Jenny, Success North Dallas, and thanks for joining us.
Welcome, Jenny.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Clint, for that introduction. And thank you so much to Bill and your group for having me. As Clint mentioned, I'm Jenny Fuller. I'm an attorney up in our Minneapolis, Minnesota office for Fox Rothschild. I am focused in our labor and employment department. So as Clint described, I advise employers and businesses on a host of employment law issues. A relevant part of my background that I think is interesting is that I have experience representing both employees and employers. earlier in my career. I did some work on the employee side. And so I transitioned years ago to representing employers, but I think it sort of helps provide an interesting perspective when I'm now advising businesses on employment practices. So I've been focused recently on the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the workplace, on the ever-changing federal, state, local laws in this area. And so today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the highlights regarding these legal issues. I've got 4 steps on the agenda today of different sort of key issues to be aware of when it comes to reopening. And so, you know, as I mentioned, I represent employers and businesses. So the information I'm going to be presenting today is really mainly from that perspective. But I think even if you aren't an employer yourself or own a business or you're not in management, if you partner with businesses, if you're returning to work yourself as an employee of an organization, it's really helpful to have this legal background, I think, as we navigate the new normal here moving forward. So starting first, some of the issues I'm going to be talking about today, just the general basics of reopening and the background of the legal climate right now. Then how to reopen, steps that you can take in your business or as an employee to protect workers and customers. Leave and accommodation issues. So there's a host of labor and employment laws that relate to leaves of absence that employees are entitled to, or reasonable accommodations that employees might be entitled to that relate to COVID-19. And then finally, potential legal claims to be aware of when reopening. As part of my practice, I try to help clients avoid litigation. So I'm going to be talking about some of the potential legal claims that might arise and how to try to prevent that. So basics of reopening, when to reopen. This may seem sort of irrelevant to most of you. I'm sure many of you have continued to work through the pandemic, whether it's from home or maybe you've got sort of limited employees in the workplace. But I think it's important to be aware of because as we know, and as has been reported, there may be sort of a resurgence of COVID-19 diagnoses into the summer and fall. And so when businesses are allowed to open, quote unquote, or have workers in the physical workplace is going to be sort of a fluid issue. And so when you're looking at this issue, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has asked employers or businesses to ask themselves 2 questions. Number 1, will reopening be consistent with applicable state and local executive orders? And then number 2, are you ready to protect employees at higher risk for severe illness? So the first question, will reopening be consistent with applicable state and local orders? So I think we all are familiar, you know, with this by now, but at the beginning of this pandemic, states and counties and even cities issued variations on these stay-at-home orders. These were orders that were issued by the government that placed restrictions on businesses. They required many businesses to close in certain capacities depending on the state or even county or city in which your business had a location. And now at this point, almost all states have begun the reopening process. They've issued comprehensive reopening plans that help guide businesses on when they can reopen their physical workplaces and bring workers back. A lot of these plans are phased, so they allow different locations to move through the plan and reopen based on certain metrics such as COVID-19 testing data. So you're going to want to make sure that you're aware of the restrictions that are in place in the location in which you have a business, or even in which there are employees that either work for you or work with you. And that would go with your partners as well. If you are even a contractor or someone who works and partners with other businesses, you're going to want to be aware of, you know, what your clients or customers are restricted from doing, so that you can partner with them effectively throughout this pandemic. So the second question, this is essentially, are you prepared to protect your workers in general? So many of these state and local executive orders that I mentioned, they include requirements for businesses and employers and even individuals to follow certain health and safety measures. to help limit the spread of COVID-19 as we all sort of reopen our businesses and our workplaces. The governments have, many of them have issued helpful guidance, fact sheets, checklists, even some signage that employers and businesses can use. Much of that is readily available on either health department or government websites. And so you're going to want to make sure you understand what requirements or recommendations are in place in the area that you are operating as a business, and then consider the feasibility of some of those restrictions or recommendations on your business or the work that you do in the community, and try to ascertain the best way to implement those. Many of the guidance that's been issued really has recommendations. There is some flexibility for how you implement some of these things in the workplace. I'm going to go through some of the key measures that you should consider as an employer or business implementing as you move forward here. And so that brings us to the next point, which is how to reopen. So, you know, I think it's probably one of the key things that you can do as a business, even a small business, or if you have your own operation, craft a reopening plan. And this can be very basic, but especially if you employ workers, this is going to be really important. You're going to want to have sort of a template or guide for how you are going to operate now moving into the future that touches on some of the key legal issues in terms of protecting workers and protecting customers and people that you interact with from the spread of COVID-19. So where do you get the information to put into your reopening plan? What are the things that you should consider and the sources of information you should pull from? Number one, what I've already talked about, these requirements mandated by your state or local government. You can find that information on local websites. OSHA guidelines, so I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but OSHA and the CDC have also issued guidance and recommendations that are pretty practical and I think helpful to businesses that you can look to. And then there are industry groups and state health departments that are issuing guidance and recommendations that are a little bit more tailored to certain job classifications or locations, depending on where you're at in the country as well. So those are some of the places that you can look to for input for your plan. As I mentioned, OSHA is the Occupational Health and Safety Administration. Many of you may be familiar with OSHA already, but to the extent you're not, just very briefly, it's a federal agency in the US that enforces safety and health standards that are required by federal law in the workplace. OSHA has issued some comprehensive guidance on preparing workplaces for COVID-19. This is, I think, a helpful place to start if, particularly if you interact with different types of folks, if you've got different types of employees that work with you that may have different risk factors for contracting COVID-19. A good example of that I often share is, let's say you're a healthcare business, you may have a group of healthcare workers that are on the front lines, exposed to different patients and quite a few individuals in the community. Their risk factors for getting COVID-19 are likely going to be different than folks that may work for you in an administrative capacity, that are able to work remotely or to go into an office and close their door. So this OSHA guidance helps you try to figure out what types of employees that you have or folks that you partner with or work with, and then the risks for those particular groups, and then gives you recommendations for protecting the spread of COVID-19 for those particular groups. And then the CDC, as I mentioned, I think we all know by now, I think we probably heard the CDC mentioned about 1,000 times over the past few months, but that's our nation's health protection agency. The CDC is sort of on the front lines of this issue. They have been issuing guidance and information for businesses and individuals on COVID-19. They have also issued specific guidance for businesses, including flow charts, fact sheets, signage, as I mentioned. This is a great place to get information about what to include in your reopening plan as well. So next, the basic components of a reopening plan. these requirements are going to vary depending on the business that you run, as you can imagine, but these are some of the key issues that we're seeing repeatedly, either recommended in these state or local government orders, or recommended by the CDC and OSHA. So I'm going to touch briefly on each one of these to just give you a little bit more background. So the first is employee hygiene and cleanliness practices. So this is your basic infection prevention measures. Again, we've all heard by now, wash your hands, use proper respiratory etiquette, use face coverings in certain circumstances if social distancing isn't possible. If you've got employees you work with in the workplace, you want to remind folks to keep up with these requirements. And if you can, provide certain resources to help them, hand sanitizer, things like that. That's great. I think this seems like such a simple recommendation, but I'd say it's probably the key one. I think based on what we know now about how this virus spreads, those types of measures can really go a long way to preventing the spread in the workplace. This is another hot topic, this next one. So health screenings and COVID-19 testing. This is sort of continuing to develop in the legal community how we're looking at this, but many employers are trying to figure out, particularly if they have employees that are at risk for contracting COVID-19, or maybe you've got a group of sales folks that's going to go out into the community and have a lot of contact with your customers and business partners. Is there a way to make sure that they don't have COVID-19 or don't have symptoms of COVID-19 before they go out into the workplace and into the community? One way to do that is by implementing either some sort of screening or COVID-19 testing. As an employer, there are a couple of different types of testing and screenings that are available. You're going to want to try to find something that works for your business. Depending on the location that you're in, it may not be required, and it's something that you can decide to do if you want. I think it makes sense if you have a lot of employees that are going to be interacting with each other or working with your partners and clients. But you can consider what type of approach works for your business, if any. And considerations you want to keep in mind when you're trying to decide what types of test is appropriate for your business. Keep in mind confidentiality of medical information. That's something that I stress, repeatedly. When you are discussing an employee's health or medical information with them, or if they've shared with you either in a document or verbally their health or medical information, that must remain confidential from the rest of your workplace. So keep that in mind when you're obtaining information like this from employees or others that you work with. So a few examples of types of health screenings. One is pretty basic, a written questionnaire. Ask employees or visitors to your business to review a list of symptoms from the CDC identified symptoms, and affirm that they don't have any of those before they interact with you or your employees. And that's a pretty simple one that's not invasive. Temperature taking, I have clients implementing this practice, particularly if you've got, again, businesses with a lot of employees that may be in close quarters that aren't able to social distance. You can take their temperature, or you can have the employee take their temperature and report that it's not above the CDC threshold of 100.4 degrees before they come into your workplace. I'll say that this type of a test, a temperature test, is really only appropriate during a pandemic. Typically, it's not appropriate to ask your employees for medical information if there's no need to warrant it before they enter the workplace. But because we are in this sort of unprecedented pandemic, some of our federal and state employment agencies have said that this practice is appropriate right now. COVID-19 testing, what I mean by this is the viral test you can get to try to detect if the presence of the active virus at the moment. So does the employee actually have the active virus in them, and meaning that they might be symptomatic or might be able to spread the virus. That's something also that our state and federal agencies have said that you can require testing on. You're going to want to make sure that any testing that you're doing is reliable and accurate. That's a requirement. That may seem sort of common sense, but because of the the demand in testing right now, even just the demand for forehead temperature scanners that we're seeing from employers and people trying to conduct some of these screenings or tests. There are some potentially unreliable products or tests that are floating around out there. You're going to want to make sure you do your research and to try to determine and use a test that is reliable. And there's guidance available from the FDA on that if that's something that you're interested in or need more information about. And then antibody testing, I'll just touch on this for just a minute. This is still sort of developing in the community, but this is, from what we understand, it's a blood test that may detect antibodies in a person's blood, which could be indicative of some level of immunity to COVID-19. It can't be used to diagnose current infection. So even though it might tell you whether or not a person could potentially have immunity, it wouldn't tell you if they are currently infected. So you're going to have to follow the other screening protocols or other general health and safety measures anyways. And because it's new and we don't really have a lot of information on whether or not it can accurately detect immunity or for how long, whether or not it's able to be utilized in the workplace remains an open question. I know they are using some of these tests in the medical community, but in terms of an employment issue, that still remains sort of open. And what I'll say generally is there's really no silver bullet. A lot of these recommendations, you can't do one thing and then feel assured that you've got, your workers protected or other folks that you're interacting with protected, and there's no liability. It's really going to be about developing a comprehensive plan that includes a lot of these different issues. So a case response plan for COVID-19. So what do you do if, you've implemented all of these measures, someone comes to you and says that they've got a fever or some symptoms of COVID-19, how do you handle that? There are recommendations on the CDC on a protocol for dealing with this type of an issue. But what I would say is you're going to want to immediately isolate and remove the individual from the workplace. You're going to want to do contact tracing. So what that means is find out if you've got other employees or clients that this person has been in contact with and try to notify them that they've been exposed to someone with COVID-19 so they can take precautions. And then confidentiality, again, you're going to want to maintain the person's identity as confidential because of federal confidentiality laws regarding medical information. And this next slide here is just an example. A lot of people say, well, I've got an employee, they were feeling sick 3 days ago. Now they say they're fine. I really want to get them back to work. Can I do that? Because of the nature of this virus and the symptomology, sometimes folks can be asymptomatic, even though they have the active virus and could still spread it. So I recommend following CDC guidance on the number of days or when to gouge when an employee might be able to return back to work. And this is just sort of an example of CDC guidance on a couple of ways to go about this. So then the next topic, social distancing practices. Again, we're probably all familiar with this by now, remaining 6 feet apart if possible. There's a variety of ways that you can kind of get creative here in terms of still interacting with people, but maintaining social distancing. So, I encourage you as a, if you've got a business or employees that you work with to sort of think about ways that you can implement this while still operating and moving forward with your business. This next issue is pretty specific to sort of larger employers with facilities with lots of folks working in them, but really important to not only maintain proper hygiene practices where you're cleaning, your doorknobs and surfaces and your personal work areas, but make sure that there's routine deep cleaning with EPA approved disinfectant products of the workplace and proper ventilation. If this is something you've got some interest in, the CDC has a very comprehensive guide that I would recommend checking out. I believe the link on this PowerPoint is a link to that guidance, and if that's not something that you can access, just reach out to me and I can direct you to the right guidance. But this is really helpful. It even provides links to products that are known to kill viruses like COVID-19, so you're working with the right cleaning products. So other planned topics, Business travel, this is one I get asked about a lot. You know, when do we start traveling again for business? When do I send employees out to talk to customers? So this, this to me is sort of a matter of how you are comfortable, you know, in your business, as long as there aren't restrictions in your local area. You know, you can sort of decide, I think, what is essential travel and what's non-essential. I think that's sort of key. A great example is if you've got just a really important pitch meeting or client presentation, something you absolutely have to be present for, and that's crucial to your business. That might be essential for you to travel with a small team versus a team of 10 you might normally travel with, something like that, versus, you know, there may be some sort of company meeting that you could really do over Zoom. Maybe pick and choose what makes sense so that you're limiting travel right now as we kind of watch how this virus is progressing. And then I would always encourage checking the CDC, or excuse me, CDC travel warnings, and then the US Department of State also has travel advisories. These are really focused on other countries and where the spread is, there's community spread happening at high levels. And so if you travel internationally for your work, I would make sure you're checking those warnings as well. And then these are a few other reopening plan topics, helpful things depending on whether or not you have quite a few employees that work for you to consider. And I'll get into a couple of these in more detail in the following slides. But the next issue, so what if employees are afraid to return to work, right? And this can even apply to what if you've got a customer that seems hesitant or something like that for coming back and doing business with you. So this is the question that I'm probably getting the most questions about. So, you know, right now, you know, businesses have been limited. We're all really excited to get back and going. It might be financially imperative for you to get your business going and for you to get your employees working for you again. And then all of a sudden you get an employee who expresses concern about coming back, saying just in general, they fear contracting COVID. There may be sort of an instinct to consider that employee insubordinate or think, well, you know, if they don't want to come back, then they've quit, and I consider that they've quit. And that's understandable, that feeling, but I would really recommend, you know, taking a pause, not going down that road, but rather engaging in an actual conversation with the employee, really understanding what are their concerns, what's the basis of their fear. It's possible it's just sort of a general fear that's really not founded in anything. But on the other hand, they may have a family member that's a high-risk individual for contracting COVID-19. Maybe they have noticed something about your workplace that you haven't thought about that they have a concern about. They may have a valuable perspective. Really important to actively listen to your employees and engage in that conversation. That can reduce potential legal claims down the road. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And there's sometimes a very easy solution to the problem. So step one, I think, is always engaging with your employees first. So the next topic is sort of in general leaves of absence and accommodations. And I'm going to talk specifically about this new law that may apply to some of your businesses. If you work for or own a business that's 500 employees or less, there was a new law enacted in March of this year. It's effective April through the end of this year at this point. And it generally applies to employers with fewer than 500 employees and governmental employers. There are a couple of minor exceptions to that for some healthcare workers and certain businesses that can meet certain criteria that are on the small side, but they're really limited exceptions. And what this law does is it provides employees with, for certain reasons, with some paid sick leave and some paid family leave. And it provides employers with a refundable tax credit for paid sick and family leave. So what does this have to do with returning to work? If you are a business that has 500 employees or less, with some limited exceptions, this is probably going to apply to your workplace. Or if you work for a business that's that size, you're going to have rights under this law. And with the resurgence or potential resurgence of COVID-19 predicted for the coming months, you may have more and more employees who either contract COVID-19 or are affected in some other way that might qualify for this leave. So I'm going to go through some of the reasons and just give you some general background on this law so that you can be aware of it in case an issue comes up. So the qualifying reasons for paid sick time under the FFCRA, there are 6 reasons. They're all COVID-19 related. So the first 3 are tied to whether or not someone is symptomatic with COVID-19 or has been diagnosed and has been working with a healthcare provider. So those reasons are listed on the screen there. There is also reason number 4 is if someone is caring for an individual who might have been ordered to quarantine under certain circumstances because of COVID-19. Reason 5 is if an employee is caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed. That's been a common issue, as you may have experienced or can imagine, because of COVID-19. And then the 6th one is sort of a catch-all, not really relevant at this point. There haven't been any additional conditions that have been identified by these government agencies, but these are the top 5 reasons why an employee may be entitled to sick leave. So if you have an employee who qualifies with one of those qualifying reasons, what pay are they entitled to and for how long? So for full-time employees, they can get up to 80 hours of paid sick leave for any of these reasons. Part-time employees, it's going to depend on the number of hours they typically work over a 2-week period. There are different rates of pay that apply to different reasons, which I've got listed on the slide here, and there are daily caps for each one of those reasons as well. So in summary, it's essentially 2 weeks of paid sick leave for any of the reasons on the slide that were listed on the previous slide. The next component of this law is paid family leave. Some of you may be familiar with the FMLA, the Family and Medical Leave Act. This is essentially a component of that now. This has been sort of amended to provide related leave, but it expands the reasons. So for that 5th reason on the slide that I showed you, if you've got an employee who's caring for a child whose school or place of care has been closed due to COVID-19, if that employee has been employed for you for 30 days, they would be entitled to paid family leave. The first 10 days are unpaid, but they could use this paid sick leave I just talked about to cover those days if this applies to them, and then they get up to 10 weeks of pay at 2/3 of their regular rate of pay. So that could be significant. So something to be aware of. And we can kind of imagine as we reopen here and even move through the summer months, you may have a scenario where your employees have kids, they're all back in their daycares or summer camps, which have opened, but then one of the children gets COVID-19 and so they have to shut down for 2 weeks. Now your employee's telling you, I need to stay home and take care of my child. So they might qualify under those circumstances for this type of leave. So something that I think we're going to want to continue to monitor. So other considerations related to this law, if this law applies to you, as I mentioned, the government is promising refundable tax credits for any of the paid leave that you provide to employees under these circumstances. So make sure you're documenting, all of the circumstances around the leave you're providing to employees. That is my #1 piece of advice on any issue to any client is document. And you may have heard this from other lawyers as well. It's so important to have documentation of your practices and how you've handled a situation, especially if you think there may be an issue down the line. Your verbal conversations that you have with people can still be evidence and helpful information, but as you can imagine, people's memories fade. And people have different views of conversations often. So if you've got documentation really, related to any employment practice, that's going to be helpful to you if there's ever a conflict down the road. A couple other details about that law. Essentially, we believe, or as of right now, the law is going to be effective through the end of this year. But as we've all seen, the legal landscape has been developing at a rapid pace, and it is possible that Congress will extend that law out into the future and potentially amend it. So another issue to watch for if you've got a business that might be considered a covered employer under that law. Reasonable accommodation issues. So just generally under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that's a federal law that provides that employers cannot discriminate against employees who have disabilities. There's many state laws that sort of mirror this federal law as well. One of the components of that law is that if an employee has a disability, they may be required to what we call a reasonable accommodation if they have issues performing the essential functions of their job because of that disability. And the way that that's coming up in the COVID-19 context is you may have someone who is considered a high-risk individual by the CDC. So examples of people who might be considered high risk for issues related to COVID-19 are people with cancer, people with asthma, other immunosuppressed conditions. Those might very likely be considered disabilities. And so if you have employees with those issues and they come to you and they request some sort of an accommodation, like working from home, maybe being separated from other employees so that they're not exposed, you're going to want to engage in a discussion with them to try to figure out what works best for them. Very similar to what I described earlier. Make sure you're having an interactive discussion and trying to find a solution for them in order to avoid legal issues down the road. There's a couple other examples of common accommodations on this slide. And leaves of absence are something that are considered an accommodation if you just can't find a solution for the employee, and maybe they just need to take a leave of absence. They could potentially go collect unemployment for a few weeks until maybe they feel comfortable coming back to work. That's an option as well. So the next topic, legal risks, legal pitfalls. So there are quite a few existing employment laws that are going to apply no matter if we're in a pandemic or not, but that we have seen sort of variations on these laws and arguments related to these laws come up in the COVID-19 context. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples of potential legal claims that could come up for businesses. So the first is retaliation. Employers cannot take adverse action against employees for engaging in protected activity. That's what we call retaliation. So what's protected activity? That's that can include if an employee complains of safety conditions that they reasonably believe are unsafe. You can't take an action for or against employees for raising those complaints. Very simple example, an employee comes to you, says, I believe there's an unsafe work condition. I feel that I might be in danger of getting hurt, and then you fire them. That would be considered retaliation. How do you protect against those types of claims? As I've been saying, most important thing you can do, hear the employee out, let them explain their concern. It's possible they have a misunderstanding about your business or your workplace. Find out what that issue is first, and then you can deal with it appropriately. Don't take adverse action against the employee. Just the timing of a termination in relation to a complaint can be considered evidence of retaliation, unless you've got a firmly established, very separate, legitimate business reason. This is sort of a tricky area, so if you think you do need to engage in any sort of employment action, I would recommend reaching out to experienced counsel on this issue to try to avoid that situation. They can guide you on messaging and all of that with the employee. Second risk, wage and hour claims. This is a really popular one as well. Lots of litigation around this issue in and outside of the pandemic. How do you avoid these types of issues? If you have non-exempt employees, these are your hourly employees, make sure that they're accurately recording all of their time. They're being paid for all of those hours worked. You can imagine now that we're in this work from home, remote work environment, employers, maybe they have employees normally punch in on a time clock, and you can very clearly see when your employees are working. If you've got an hourly employee working at home, it may be difficult to ascertain when they're working, and therefore difficult to make sure they're being paid in accordance with the law. So make sure you've got practices in place to ensure you know when they're working. The same would go for if you do decide to do some testing. Maybe you want to have employees come in for extra meetings related to COVID-19, things like that. Make sure they're being paid for all of that extra time. Seems simple, but there's class action litigation that can cost quite a bit of money and last years over some of these simple issues. So it's sort of basic these basic practices can really go a long way. Exempt employees, if these are for employees that are not paid overtime, they're your salaried employees. If you are, many employers I know are making difficult decisions. They've got to reduce hours of some people they work with. They've got to reduce or modify their job duties. Make sure that you are not running afoul of the exemption laws regarding salaried employees. Make sure you're paying them the weekly amount that you're required to for salaried employees. This is $684 a week under federal law, and there are state law variations of this as well. This is probably an area to double check with counsel if it's an issue for you, as it can be a little bit complicated, but at least this can maybe help you issue spot if this is relevant to your business. Next issue, ADA claims. I've already talked about reasonable accommodations, but these are some types of claims that can come up related to that same law. If you fail to accommodate an employee because of their disability, let's say you say, no, you absolutely cannot work from home. There may be grounds for an employee to bring a claim, depending on the circumstances. Again, why I always encourage that interactive dialogue to get to a place of resolution with the employee first. And what I'll say about accommodations is that, many employers think, well, I would let them, maybe shift their job duties or work from home or some of these other accommodations, but it's going to cost my business money. They're not going to get their work done effectively. But the law requires the employer to bear those burdens when it comes to disabled employees, to keep those disabled employees working. And then another way that these ADA claims come up with respect to COVID is that, we've been hearing a lot in the news from the CDC that there are certain employees that might be high risk, certain employees of different ages that might contract COVID-19 and be more susceptible to it. So what I would say is that you have to be very careful. You're not just taking a whole category of those people and saying, we're not going to bring you guys back to work because you might, for your own safety, you might end up, with COVID-19. You've got to treat everybody the same. If someone comes to you and raises an issue, that's when it's appropriate to deal with it. But you don't want to make blanket judgment calls about entire groups of employees based on characteristics like their age or medical conditions. And then finally, a handful of other potential legal claims to be aware of. There are additional statutes that might provide potential leave to employees. I already went over that FFCRA, that new federal law. The FMLA provides unpaid leave to individuals with serious health conditions. That could, somebody with COVID-19 might end up with a serious health condition, may need to be hospitalized. They may qualify for FMLA leave. That applies to employers of over 50. But there are state laws. If you've got employees that work in different states, even if you have one or two, make sure you're checking the laws of those states to see if they have any rights to leave or sick leave in those states as well. Understand what laws apply to your business based on location. And even cities, here in Minneapolis, we have no sick leave law in the state of Minnesota, but Minneapolis, we've got a pretty progressive city council, and they have enacted protections just for Minneapolis residents. So not something that a lot of employers might be conscious of, but make sure you're checking to see if there are any local restrictions from your cities or counties that fall within this category as well. And then age discrimination, I referenced that again. You can't refuse to bring back older workers because, even if you're concerned that they may be subject to COVID-19 or be vulnerable to COVID-19, because that could prompt an age discrimination claim. Union organizing is another potential legal issue that could come up. You may be hearing about this in the news, but unions are reaching out to workers that feel their health is being jeopardized to help assert their rights. So you may not have employees, you may not have a unionized workplace, but there's a potential that a union could organize in your workplace. One way to try to combat this is just to take steps to make sure your employees are feeling safe at work and they don't have any of these concerns. employees often organize when they do not feel heard or don't feel respected. And so another reason to engage in conversations with employees you work with, and even business partners, so that you're understanding their concerns that they're dealing with their own workforces. OSHA citations. So some of the issues I've touched on before, employees complaining about health and safety issues in the workplace, how this would turn into a legal issue is if OSHA investigates your workplace. They might give you a citation for violations of some of the federal or state health and safety standards. What I'll say is OSHA is extremely overwhelmed right now, as you can imagine. And I just did a similar presentation with a colleague of mine, and he said, don't expect an OSHA SWAT team to bust in if you get low on hand sanitizer. So what I think he means by that is they're very busy. Most likely, they're not going to be inspecting every workplace. But how this becomes an issue is, and when you can expect an inspection, is if an employee calls you or calls OSHA and reports you. So make sure that you are addressing any employee concerns internally so that they aren't involving outside agencies. Second to last potential legal issue, work comp claims. We're getting so many questions about this. So what happens if an employee contracts COVID-19 at work, or they think it was at work? Can they sue you as a business? Even if, let's say there's only a handful of people in their business, can they sue you? What rights do they have? How does that work? So generally, if an employee can show that they've contracted COVID-19 at work, that's going to be a matter of workers' comp, and which would be handled by your workers' comp insurer if you're an employer. You can imagine how this might be difficult, right? You may have an employee go to a barbecue with 20 people on a Saturday, come to work on a Monday, and then, on a Tuesday they have symptoms. Well, how do we know if they got it at work or not? In most states, the employee is going to have to show and prove they got it at work in order to be successful on a claim like that. But I will say there are some states, including California and even in Minnesota, that have enacted recent legislation that shifts that burden and requires employers to prove that the employee didn't get it at work. So most likely going to cost some expense. And so that's why it's important to implement all of those things that I've discussed previously. If you can show your business is doing what it's supposed to, even just by implementing some of those basic infection prevention measures, making sure people are social distancing, making sure you have a response plan if someone gets COVID-19 to get them out of the workplace. If you can show you're doing that, that's going to go a long way if an employee ever tries to claim that you should be liable for any consequence of them getting COVID-19. And then the last issue I think is really important and may resonate with some of you folks that are in sort of the information technology and data privacy space. As you can imagine, we went from probably a majority of workers working in the workplace to all going home in a matter of months, and so much information now, if not all information, is transmitted electronically from people's homes, their laptops, their phones. As a business might have confidential information or even trade secret information you're going to want to protect. So make sure that you are ensuring that your information is protected, and the people that work for you or the people that partner with you understand that they need to keep your business information confidential. And actually, sort of in closing, we've got quite a few resources on our Fox web page. We've got an entire coronavirus resource center that's got hundreds of articles and webinars. And I know we have a really fantastic webinar put on by a couple of our leading data privacy lawyers on this very issue. So if that's something that you're interested in, I can connect you with that. So, and then this final slide, where can you get additional information? These are all great resources. We've got a link to our coronavirus resource page on here as well, but also helpful links if you have questions or want to access some of that guidance that I discussed earlier on in the presentation.
Wow. Jenny, thank you very, very much. Incredible information. But I think the biggest thing I got out of this is that you and Fox Rothschild, or as you say, Fox, are a repository of information. and you've been researching this for a good while. We're going to do a few questions and answers. And Michelle, who's been running the quote, who's kept out the Zoom bombers. She's good security. She and her family all have second or third degree black belts. They've owned a martial arts studio. So, we put her in this role. But Michelle, would you handle maybe 3 or 4 Q&As?
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Jenny. That was amazing. Everybody says they're very thankful for the information, and you really helped them. Solomon Israel has a question. He says, do you have any advice related to how to address situations where an employee is uncomfortable to return to the work environment? My question relates to a school environment.
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So I touched on this on one of the slides, but I can elaborate a little bit. So, so from a legal perspective, employees have rights to a safe work environment. So that would apply to schools as well. And so if an employee comes to you and says, I'm afraid to return to work because I don't believe the work environment is safe, that would be a protected complaint. So you're going to want to make sure that you don't retaliate against them, don't fire them, but instead engage with them and talk to them about how, what their concern is. And what I'll say is, if an employee just has a very general fear of contracting COVID-19, and it's not based on anything, it's just in general, I don't even want to leave my house because who knows where this virus is, that's not going to be enough, most likely, for them to refuse to come to work. They really need to articulate a specific threat, a specific danger. So engage with the employee, find out what the reason is. If the reason is, specific and something that's legitimate, let's say, they say, I really can't social distance, or I can't do X, Y, and Z. Talk with them about potential accommodations that might work for them to get them back to work.
Very good. Lynn O'Neill says, what is the predicted major area of future litigation related to the issues discussed, particularly in small businesses?
Yeah, I would say it's hard to pick just one, but I would say probably retaliation. And that's sort of a growing area in litigation even outside of the pandemic. And I talked about that as sort of the first legal pitfall. But, retaliation means that if an employee has engaged in protected activity under the law, which could include the scenario we just discussed, if they've engaged in protected activity, let's say they've complained about a worker safety issue, if they complain about discrimination, being treated unfairly in the workplace, that's protected. In some states, there are whistleblower laws. In the state of Minnesota, we have one that says if you report a violation of the law, or even if it's not a violation, but let's say you think your employer isn't following the law, if it's a good faith report, that's protected. And so I think the number one piece of advice, like I said, engage with the employees, find out what the reason is. And then let's say you really do need to part ways with this employee for other reasons. I would contact counsel. This is one of the areas where I think it's really tricky, and the messaging and how you handle an adverse action could benefit from even just a very short conversation with your attorney.
Yeah. People are asking if you would mind sharing the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, no problem. We can arrange for that.
Solomon Israel has another question. Does age alone constitute a reasonable accommodation trigger?
That's another good question. So age alone is a protected class, what we call a protected class. So you can't terminate someone or discriminate against someone based on age alone. But when it comes to reasonable accommodations, those only apply to disabilities. So an employee, I suppose, could say, well, my age over, let's say there's this, I think the CDC threshold is 65, where there's maybe a little bit of a heightened risk. My age makes me more susceptible to COVID-19. I would, still engage with that person, particularly if they have other risk factors, in trying to find a reasonable accommodation for them. And
everybody, as we go through this, we're going to be sticking around for a while afterwards because there's a whole lot of other questions. I'm going to ask one that answer it after we end the meeting when we start into some open Q&A. But I've seen all the medical kiosks. People are going through these kiosks. We have a source for those. A friend of mine is doing those. where it's linked into your HR system, it facial recognition, it records the temperature, and then you're either allowed in or not. Other people are taking a temperature, then allowing you in. Is there a medical or a HIPAA issue if I take your temperature and I say don't come in, and everybody knows it? Is that a presumptive slam at the employee? Is that an issue that I could be held liable for? And we'll start that with the last question afterwards. But Jenny Fuller, I want to thank you. I want to thank Clint David. And I have a gift for you that we will mail to you. The Nature of Excellence. And this book was given to me by Colleen Barrett, the president of Southwest Airlines. It's the book that she gave and the CD she gave me, and CD she gave to their board of directors when she retired and became president emeritus. It's by Lee and Judy Cohen, who've been supporters of Success North Dallas forever. And Jenny, I hope this sits on your coffee table. I hope it gives you great joy, because you certainly have been, we've worked on this program for a long time. And Jenny, you put in a lot of hours, and I want to acknowledge that. And Clint David, I know you like to eat a lot.
Yes, sir.
But for you, my friend, from 12 Cuts Brazilian Steakhouse that we talked to, dinner for two, just as a thank you, the people that founded 12 Cuts are the people that founded Fogo de Chao. And so they're doing everything now in this new place that they weren't quite able to do at Fogo de Chao. And I've eaten there since the coming back of COVID-19. And just enjoy. It is superb, and huge thanks to both of you. You know, we're in a strange time. Albert Einstein said the only life worth living is a life lived for others, and that certainly is that time. I want you all to write down two websites. The first one is Be Well, Take Care, bewelltakecare.com, and the second one is c-sweetsupplies.com. Be Well Take Care is one of our one of our regular members, Tammy Barrier. And Tammy, I thank you very, very much, because Tammy puts together all of our happy hours and our bonus sessions, and really appreciate that. But this is a company she's involved with. It has all your PPE supplies coming back. And then C-Suite Supplies also has them, sometimes maybe in a little higher quantity, but they both are good sources where you don't get ripped off going to the internet. We've validated every single source. We actually, when it comes down to rapid test blood kits, we've got access to 2 million a day when that comes in. So at prices lower than and they're made by the same company that makes the big boys. And on sales, if you're having an issue with sales, Debbie Mrazek put up a post that she'd be happy to help you. Her company's the sales company. And so, and then Jan Claudner, back behind the scenes, has been doing all the slides, putting all this together. He spent hours, and Jan's been with me as one of our volunteers and partner now, since this group was 6 months old. So Jan, I want to thank you. And we talk about upcoming meetings. Oh my goodness, upcoming meetings today. How about that? You don't have to wait. 11:55. It's our Success North Dallas Young Executives. You can go to our website. It'll direct you in to register. But look at this title, How Not to Suck at Virtual Networking. Incredible. They've got plenty of room. Go sign up. And I guarantee you the speaker, I know her. She's phenomenal. She's a genius at networking and a genius at the virtual. July 15, we're going home. March would have been our 26th anniversary at Prestonwood Country Club. But we're going back to Prestonwood. Our speaker is the CEO of Club Corp, David Pillsbury, and it's talking about coming back to club life and what everybody's having to do to get back, just everything about this current situation that we're in. And then we're working with, and hopefully it's going to happen either at this meeting or at a town hall. But John Barrett is the president of ISSA, the largest, well, the only international national cleaning company association. They're the ones that do the certifications. And this will be about prepping your facilities, keeping your facilities, what you have to do if you're just a sole prop, other things dealing with this. Very, very timely. We're working to bring that up. And then, of course, working with Dr. Ben Carson on a major event. Ross Perot Jr., Jerry Jones, many upcoming speakers. We've got IX, Meg Mankey, and Rachel from South Dakota actually flying in to Dallas for October. September is going to be a blast. And so make sure you're on our email list. Make sure you watch them, because it's a whole lot more than just a meeting. Upcoming sponsored events. This is a gimme. This one is a gimme. June 22nd through 25th from 11 to 12:30 every day, or the 22nd through the 25th. It is the high stakes forum put on by C-Suite Network. This was going to have been a huge charge event, a couple of $2,000 to $5,000. It was going to be held at the Penthouse and Concierge Suite at, I think it was the Bellagio in Vegas. It's not. It's being held virtual, and it's free to Success North Dallas members and friends. You can find it High Stakes Forum. You can find it on our web. The speakers go from the CMO of Party City to Hugh Hefner's daughter and all of the pivots that she has done, to several admirals, the multiple CEOs. It will be time very well spent. Then Randy Mayhew, July the 10th, I believe. Is that correct? What do we have?
No, it's July 3rd.
You are doing the 3rd.
Friday. And we're going to present, I'm going to present the synopsis of The Ride of a Lifetime by Robert Iger. It's the book, he led Disney, and Bill Gates calls this the best business book he's read in the last year. But we're also adding a book on racism. And we're going to do this for 3 or 4 months. And this is the National Book Award winner by Ibram X. Kendi, stamped from the beginning. So we're going to do one business book and one book dealing with racial issues for the next 3 or 4 months. Bill, thank you very much. July 3rd, 7:30 in the morning, and all of the information's on the blog. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We're used to laugh and say second best meeting every month, but it's pretty close to a tie, folks. This is something he's been doing it for 23 years, and it's a great return on your time. July 29th, surprise, happy hour. You need to be on the email list and watching it. August 27th, happy hour hosted at Lincoln Experience out at the Star. Hopefully they're using this happy hour to kick off the Cowboy season. Plans are to have some tickets, some football players. We'll see what happens. That's all I can say. American October, geez, we're jumping way out there. October 26th and 27th, or let's see, is that right? 26th and 27th, yes. American Future Series. And they're going to be doing this out at the Frisco Convention Center. And I'm going to say this one thing about it. If you want to do business with the military, this is the place you must be, because you'll have the opportunity to meet the contacts, to pitch the high-level military, to at least meet them. There's opportunities for sponsorship, attendance. When you think about it, what the American Future Series is, it's about the future of America. And this Defense Innovation Summit is October 26th, 27th. They're calling it Advanced Technologies and National Security. It's an all-day summit. General John Murray, AFC, Secretary Patrick Murphy, Congressman Pete Sessions, Secretary Gordon England, Colonel Alan West, some admirals, Secretary James Hondo Gertz, the General Ratty Award, also the banquet with the American Future Series 5-star awards, honoring companies and individuals that have shown extraordinary support for our military and for their families. And on October the 26th, is the Joint Forces Pitch Day. And this is an opportunity to connect with active military, defense departments, and the leaders of the branches of service that make the buys. Companies looking to do business with the military can come here. You can see on the screen. They can meet these people. They can interact with them. And they also will be opportunities to find the equity to back these particular deals. So it's a gift to be in this marketplace where you don't have to fly to it. David Hamilton, Michelle Pearson, thank you. If you need more information, contact Michelle Pearson at Windsor, WINDSOR, Morgan.com. And then we've got 2 dates to be announced. The first one is the Moon family hosting us at a happy hour at their Coyote Ridge Golf Course and Development. And the second one is a formal presentation of Ro Diaz's painting, Back the Blue, which was painted at our February meeting, honoring all of the Dallas police officers of the year. And Ro Diaz's painting, as I said, is Back the Blue. We will do a presentation of that. And he did this beautiful painting during the meeting. Unbelievable. So we're kind of coming down to a wrap. I want a few things I want to go over. There's a lot of expenses. We're not generating revenue right now, but there's an opportunity to make a donation if you'd like. Suggested is 20. There are many people on this that are not members. Just go to our membership link. You'll find a donate button. It's got a blank behind it. 0, 5, 10, 20, whatever you want to do. More, that's fine, or nothing at all. And if you really like today, join us. Join us. We want you to be a part of the family. Our annual dues are $345, and that's all 12 meetings, continental buffet, the best of the best in speakers. First-time guests are welcome and free. And folks, this is the true place where meaningful relationships are built. The meaningful relationships that has started 98 companies, created 1,000 jobs, and 7 Ernst & Young Entrepreneurs of the Year. That's what meaningful relationships are all about. So $345, join today. You get 2 months free because of what's going on. It will pay you through August of 2021. That's the same thing we're doing for our regular members. And it's simple. Just go to become a member. It'll walk you right through it. We want you to become part of the Success North Dallas family. And if membership is not right for you, make a donation or whatever works for you. And we'll be starting to send out invoicing again as we move to come back in. At this time in the meeting, we used to do special introductions. Anybody in transition, new to Dallas, looking for an internship, we'd ask them to come down to the front, fly the American flag, and would ask anybody in the room to come down and visit with them afterwards if they had an idea. So instead of standing up to give your name and discipline, just send us an email at info@successnorthdallas.com with your name, your discipline, a couple of paragraphs about you, not a resume, but we'll get that out to the people that are looking. And by sending this, you are giving us permission to share it and to share your information. And we'll just be happy to do. And another first we started during this COVID-19, watch your emails this afternoon. You will not only get the slides, you will get a video of the entire meeting. And I encourage you, share that with a friend. Bring somebody you think would be great with us. Because in July the 15th and August, we're going to broadcast the meeting virtual as well as in person. And then in September, we're going to set up a new virtual membership for people 100 miles outside of Dallas. So watch your emails. I guess I should mention Lava Cantina. Thanks, Jan, on the 20th at 7:30. And believe me, you may not be there. You may not be in Florida either after saying Jen is 60 and not 55. I'm very, very worried about that. I think if I were a good insurance agent, I'd write a policy. But anyway, in closing, we look forward to seeing you on July the 15th, virtual or in person. Bring a friend. And ladies and gentlemen, all of us, a thank you to Jenny Culver. A thank you to Clint David. A thank you to Jeff Crilly. And in And Fox Rothschild also has a gift. We gave them gifts. They have a gift for you other than Jenny's time. You'll be receiving a list of all their upcoming webinars that are focused on this, and you will be treated just like a client. You'll have access, and that's their gift to us from the 1,000 attorneys. And we'll send that out. And Clint, thank you so.
Bill, before you close, there's something I'd like to say. First of all, I want to thank Jenny for participating in this. I know, being a member of the Success North Dallas family, there are a lot of wide eyes and around the table, virtual table right now. The information she provided is absolutely overwhelming.
Yes.
And coming from not just a Success North Dallas guy, but from somebody that had his own law firm for 30 years before I joined Fox Rothschild, I would be pulling my hair out right now if I were still self-employed. With Jenny's presentation, and some of you may well be too. I just want to encourage you, sure you consult with your lawyer. There's so many issues here, employment, legal, but more importantly, we're still beings. We're not talking about numbers and percentages, and all of these people, someday this COVID will end. Hopefully the people that were important to us and our organizations will return, and people have long memories. So remember how you treat your people during this disaster, because at some point they may be calling on you, and they will appreciate it. So that's all I have to say. I look forward to attending Success North Dallas in the future meetings, and thanks for the time to hear Jenny's expertise.
Well, Clint, thank you very much. Jenny, again, standing ovation, everybody. Just unbelievable, wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, may you do what you love to do with people you love to do it with on purpose. God bless and Godspeed. And now let's have some virtual networking. Let's have some fun. So who's out there? And Jenny's going to start with answering my question.
Yeah, definitely. I also echo Clint's sentiments. I think really important things to keep in mind. So great question, Bill. I think that's a question I'm getting from a lot of people. So as an employer, really, you've got to do your best to safeguard medical information of your employees. Obviously, if someone sees somebody walk in to get their temperature taken, they walk out and they go home, there's nothing you can do about that. But as an employer, you wouldn't be able to then go tell all of your employees what that employee's temperature was. So if you're focusing on sort of the actual medical information, what the symptoms are the employee is reporting, what their temperature is, if an employee has told you they have COVID-19, all of that should remain confidential. Practically speaking, it seems kind of silly, you know, if you've got 3 employees and one person's not at the workplace, you know, they're going to figure out who the person is with COVID-19. But unless that employee has told you it's okay to share the information, you're going to want to keep it confidential.
All right, somebody else out there, your mics are all unmuted as of right now, soon. But we're open. If you have a question, if you have a give, if you have a question for somebody else, let's just kind of have this open. I'm sure most of the questions will be directed toward Jenny, but any questions?
Bill, this is Michelle MacArthur. And Jenny, this was so beneficial. I want to just say thank you so much for your time. Bill, I put into the chat a special for everyone attending. There's a code to get a 5% discount to come to the restaurant at 12 Cuts. It would be an honor. I know Aldo would just graciously welcome everybody there. And it was great virtually seeing those that were there at Sabrina's legacy. I saw your picture, Bill. So great celebrations for your birthday month.
Thank you, Michelle. And Michelle Pearson, you've got a bunch of questions there. Why don't you pick 2 or 3 and we'll kind of use that to start it off. You're muted.
Okay, Jenny, I have a personal question before I ask someone else, if that's okay. Like, what about like churches and members? Like actually my church, they're planning on taking temperature of everybody. How vulnerable are they to litigation for letting members in? I mean, do they have to go to that extreme of, you know, checking everybody's temperature? And wondering about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's going to be not really an employment issue, but as an organization, they can sort of set the rules for who enters. They still have to do it in a way that's fair to people. They can't violate other laws. They can't discriminate against people. But if they want to set as a condition of coming into the church, that the temperature is taken because they have a valid concern about spreading COVID-19, they can do that. I think that actually is an issue that is being regulated by a lot of these state and local executive orders. You can see kind of across the country, some areas, they're allowing churches to be open with, 50 people. Some are just allowing, private things like baptisms and things to go forward with only 10 people. So it's also going to depend on what those local restrictions are, depending on where your church is located.
Yeah, our mega church, Prestonwood, has reopened with social distancing. And I just got a text from a doctor who's also an attorney. And he said, a temperature is not a diagnosis. A temperature is just a signal of something, who knows what. So interesting comment there. Michelle, what's next?
Okay, it says, Shelley DeForest says, when sharing in a big office building and the ventilation air conditioner and heater is shared with multiple businesses, is there a risk of contamination with the return air? Is there measures for better, more frequent filter changes in these systems?
Yeah, so what I'll say is I'm not really an expert on the ventilation issue, but if you are an employer, you're going to want to make sure that you're providing a safe workplace for your employees, and that would include the air ventilation. And so if there is an issue with the air ventilation, even if you share that system with other businesses, you're going to want to work together to make sure you're following CDC guidance. And I think I mentioned there was a link in one of the PowerPoint slides, and hopefully if we circulate those, you'll actually be able to click on that, and that brings you right to that CDC guidance. And there's a whole host of recommendations for how to handle ventilation issues in that guidance.
Oh, excellent. And there's also a company here, Cornbread Hustle, Cherry Garcia, and they are doing intense cleanings of companies, and they're putting a lot of people to work that wouldn't have a job normally. So, and they've got some information on that, but that's Cornbread Hustle, Cherry Garcia. And then go to ISSA, probably .org, but they also will have a lot of that. That's the International Cleaning Association. Next question, Michelle.
Debbie Merzak says, if someone has had COVID-19, do they divulge that to a new employer?
So there's no sort of broad legal requirement that you have to divulge that you have COVID-19 to like a new employer. I suppose maybe if the question is, are you applying for a job, you currently have it, are you legally required to disclose it? Technically the answer would be no. However, like I said, from a broad legal perspective, but that employer may very well have their own requirements and policies that ask you to disclose it, and they are allowed to ask you. So you would want to comply with that and disclose it. And I think particularly if you actually have the active virus, it would probably be helpful to disclose it if you have to. What I would say too is you could always wait until you get the job. So maybe not necessarily something you disclose in your first interview, but if they offer you the job, that would be a good time to say, hey, I've got this current virus, but I'm willing to quarantine till my symptoms are over. Can I start after that? That would be a good way of handling it.
Let's see, I don't think there's any more that I can see on the chat. So we could just open it up, Bill, to others that have questions if you want to.
Absolutely. Who has a question or a comment?
I have a comment. This is Randy.
Please.
I really appreciated this presentation, Jenny. It was very much on, if I can use the word, guidelines and rules, and it didn't deal a lot with the psychology. There are plenty of people, and I'll raise my hand, who are nervous about interacting, and certainly I have had no interactions in anything other than the most minimal. I think there's a psychological factor here, and people are going to be nervous for quite some time. Do you have any comment about that?
I think that's very true, and I think that is going to impact workplaces for a while. You know, that sort of ties back to a few times I mentioned in the presentation. Make sure you have open lines of communication with your employees. You have a legal obligation in some respects to talk through some of these issues with employees, particularly if they have a disability that makes them more susceptible, or some other issues, or they have a specific health and safety concern. So I think even from, you know, a good business practice, Clint mentioned, you know, these people have long memories. You want to retain good employees that are assets to your organization. So the best thing that you can do is hear them out and try to work with them through this pandemic. And hopefully once we get on the other side, you know, everyone can move forward.
Thank you.
Who's next? Well, I have just a follow-up, and that would be that when you get this email, which we'll get out to you this afternoon or tomorrow, it'll have a listing of the upcoming events from Fox Rothschild. Don't hesitate to sign up for those. Any questions that are very personal that perhaps were not answered or you didn't want to ask today, Jenny says just email them to her and she will respond to those or put it to a team member to respond. It's a great opportunity for us. It's a great resource for us. And I'm just, I'm tremendously, tremendously grateful. Jan, anything that we've missed? Or Michelle?
Nothing from my end. I'll be sending out an email this afternoon. And if you don't get it this afternoon by 5 o'clock, don't hesitate to write me and say, where is it?
And also, if you're going to come to the Lava Cantina, shoot me a text or something so we can have some kind of a little head count. And when you think about Success North Dallas, think about it like this. A group of community-focused leaders, state-focused leaders, and national-focused leaders, if not world changers, because that's what you people really are. And that's why I'm so honored to be involved with this, to be able to sit or here at the head of it or stand at the head at the lectern, whatever it is going to be. If you have feedback as far as the virtual or things that you would like to see us do, please let me know. And if you have an idea for a great speaker, we get our speakers the old-fashioned way. A lot of times they ask us, or a lot of times our members tell us about them, or sometimes we actually ask them. July 15th, back home. I'm loving this. Prestonwood Country Club. We've already gone over the table settings, the distancing. We know exactly how many people we can have in the room. When you get the announcement, RSVP early, because there will be a cutoff. There will be a cutoff due to social distancing, and we're going to act on that. We may or may not put out name tags because you have to fumble through to look for your name tag. At this point, I would say we will not, but there's a chance we will. So if you want to wear your own, that's fine this time. Normally we discourage that. And we're going to kick it off. We'll open the doors at 6:30. Buffet will open at 6:45. It won't be a buffet. I'm not sure exactly what it'll be. Probably be individual little plates, but we'll be there waiting. A mask, that's your comfort factor. We're not going to dictate mask. We're going to dictate one thing. Don't be in denial of COVID-19, but don't let it run your life. Live your life and love your life, because that's the only way it's going to love you back. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, again, as Jeff Crowley told me last week, he said, you look pretty good at the anchor, but you got to be able to knock the papers down, lay them down, and that means it's a wrap. So ladies and gentlemen, God bless, Godspeed, be safe. it's a wrap.